You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today I kick off my 2023 NFL Draft Preview Series, where we're diving into teams, going over who I would like to see the team take in the first round, and also going over a second selection between days 2 and 3, talking about the team adding another piece that I think is essential to their roster and help pushing the organization forward. And today, I am starting with the Carolina Panthers, the team that holds the number 1 pick in the NFL Draft, which kicks off April 27th, so make sure you mark your calendars. We are getting close. We're just about, actually, we are exactly a month away. Today is March 27th, April 27th is a day. So, a month away from draft time. My hope is I can dive through every single team in the NFL, but I've decided that I will get through as many as possible because life keeps me busy. So my Panthers fans, we're starting off with you all. Make sure you dive in that comment section down below. What do you want to see the Panthers do with that number 1 pick in the NFL Draft? What's another guy or maybe a couple of guys that you have your eye on that you would like to see your team target? I would love to hear your thoughts. Fire away in that comment section down below. But diving in, we will start with the lesser of the 2 selections here. We'll save that first round pick for a little bit later in the video. Starting off with my day 2/3 selection here, my thought process going into this one for the Carolina Panthers was, how can we work on fortifying the defense just a little bit more? The reason for that is because clearly the Panthers have done a lot to really bulk up the offense and get things ready for whoever their incumbent quarterback is going to be from the NFL Draft with that number 1 selection. So I figured, let's take a look at the defense. The first thing that came to my mind, because you have a pretty good core at secondary, you have some really good linebackers on top of that. Defensive line, you do have some stars. Obviously, Brian Burns headlining that group here. But I want to see this team go after someone to pair up alongside Brian Burns. Burns had 12.5 sacks this past season in 2022. Frankie Louvu was the next closest with only 7 sacks, and then further beyond that, it's like 5 sacks or less for all the defensive linemen and any other miscellaneous guys who maybe racked up a sack or 2 here and there. I want to see the Panthers go after a guy that they can pair up on the opposite end to help out Brian Burns and start bringing some more pressure to make things easier for the back end and the other 2 levels of the defense. With that in mind, as I was going through draft previews, mock drafts, and, you name it, I've been to tons and tons of pre-draft websites that are giving away breakdowns, pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses, all that. And I came across somebody who, with the Panthers picking so high in every single round of the draft, should be somebody that they should be able to lock down. Defensive end Will McDonald IV from Iowa State. At 6'3", 239 pounds, this guy is a supreme athlete. Everywhere I looked, the same thing kept popping up. Excellent athlete, insane explosiveness. He is an athlete, athletic here, athletic this. Something to do with his athleticism was mentioned in just about every single pre-draft breakdown that I went through. And you can even see it on some of his tape as well. He also has the versatility, even though he's a defensive end, to play the outside linebacking pass rusher role as well. So whether you're running a 3-4 or a 4-3, this guy can bring it. And I've seen some people even say with scouting reports that he was a little bit misused, being forced to play rather than outside of tackles, up on over the tackles, or maybe even inside of the tackles. And it sounds like a lot of people are under the consensus with his struggles against the run that he should just be placed outside of the tackle and chasing after the quarterback. Now, for all of the praise of his relentless motor, his explosiveness, him being a supreme athlete, he has apparently really good hands when it comes to fighting off offensive linemen when he's trying to make his way to the quarterback. There are a couple of cons that I came across that are a little bit concerning, and then there's also some things that I don't think are too worrying, but a lot of people seem to be concerned with his play strength. He also gets beat a lot when it comes to double teams. And while that is a bit concerning, I will say this, and this is more so about the double team being an issue for him than the play strength, but we're pairing somebody up here with Brian Burns. Again, my goal here was to find somebody that is not the guy, but the assist to the guy. Brian Burns being the guy and Will McDonald being his assistant. This guy notched double-digit sacks in 2020 in 2021. He may not be beating all the double teams. He might not be a world beater at the next level, but he's athletic enough and has shown he can be disruptive enough that he can be a force to be reckoned with, that someone maybe defenses have to at least respect and maybe take away some of the protection against Brian Burns to open things up. And maybe we take Brian Burns' sack total from 12.5 to 14, 15, maybe 16 sacks, because defenses have to account for what's coming on the side opposite of him. So as for my final thoughts on this pick, like I've already mentioned a handful of times, this was all about helping out Brian Burns and going after a position that I would say doesn't necessarily have an answer opposite of Brian Burns. I really like the secondary over there with the Carolina Panthers. I'm also a fan of the linebacking core. The back, what is it? Seven? Yeah, the back seven people that aren't on the defensive line or so is when you're in like nickel, or if like you're running, whatever it is that they're running over there in Carolina when it comes to going after the quarterback, is pretty solid. And to be fair, I think could benefit even more because you have, a really good group of guys. Von Bell, Jeremy Chin, Dante Jackson. I mean, J.C. Horn, there's so much to like. And then you got like Shaq Thompson as a linebacker. Frankie Louvu, as I mentioned, is a really disruptive, versatile linebacker. There's a lot to like beyond the defensive line of the Carolina Panthers. I think if you target a guy like Willie McDonald, it makes Brian Burns' job easier. Their pass rush becomes more disruptive, and then the secondary can do even better. The linebackers can do even better. Maybe you're giving them a half a second, maybe a second more because you're forcing a quarterback out of the pocket. Who knows? But I think that going after an edge rusher, somebody that, again, can play just the regular D-end role if you're in a pass rushing nickel set, whatever it may be, or if it's just a standard, he's not necessarily the best against run defense, but again, he doesn't have to be the guy. He's just somebody to help it out. I like Will McDonald. I think he would be a really good fit for Carolina, and they could find a number of ways to use him over there with the Panthers. Now, let's dive in and talk about the question that everyone seems to be asking about. Nobody has the answer to, except for what seems like Vegas, but what do the Panthers do with the number one overall selection here? It's obviously going to be quarterback. I would be legitimately shocked if it's not quarterback, and I think the whole world would be legitimately shocked if it was not quarterback. So with that in mind, who is the quarterback? Is it Anthony Richardson? Supreme athlete, slight bit of a wild card, but I mean, he's got the size, the arm strength, the mobility, the raw, just that talent that you look at, and if you're an offensive coordinator and a quarterback's coach, you go, look at that guy. We could mold him into something great. Is it someone like C.J. Stroud? More of your traditional quarterback, very smart. He can make all the throws, good arm strength. Not necessarily great, but good arm strength, very accurate. He's played in a big school and big games, so he's a guy that can thrive in a good situation when he has great pieces around him. Maybe someone like Will Levis, who a lot of people like and consider a prototypical guy, but he's a little rough around the edges, but he fits the bill of what an NFL quarterback is supposed to be. For me, it's really starting to feel like C.J. Stroud. With the amount of people that the Panthers sent to go look at C.J. Stroud during his pro day, to FanDuel's betting odds, having C.J. Stroud as a minus 300 favorite to be the number one overall pick in the draft, C.J. Stroud makes a lot of sense. And honestly, the more I look at it, and I have a little bit of a theory on this one here, we'll get into that in a second, but it feels like C.J. Stroud is kind of like the safest selection because, again, he has good size, 6'3", 214 pounds. He could maybe weigh like 5 to 10 pounds heavier if you really want him to bulk up a little bit, but that is something you can definitely work on. He's got, again, the prototypical size, excellent accuracy. People do knock him for having elite NFL caliber talent to throw to for the majority of his career while he was at Ohio. So there is that. But for me, or Ohio State, excuse me, for that, I say the Panthers have kind of worked their offense to make him successful. They went and got DJ Chark, who I think is an underrated receiver. You went and got Adam Thielen, a fantastic, savvy veteran. He's probably not the Adam Thielen from a few years ago, but he's still Adam Thielen and a guy that if you're throwing the football to, he's going to make the catch. You go after Miles Sanders, underrated running back. There's a lot to like. You've kind of been retooling your offensive line as well, which was awful just a few years ago, but has seemed to kind of been put together a little bit better at least, and maybe you continue to work on that through the draft. CJ Stroud with everything that he's really good at, plus the additions you've added on offense, makes a lot of sense to me. Again, you could go with some of the wild card guys. Like Will Levis Will Levis reminds me of like a kind of Josh Allen type deal, and Anthony Richardson does as well. Like those two guys are like balls of clay that a quarterback coach and an offensive coordinator are going to want to really mold into what they want them to be, and that's what it's going to take. Whereas CJ Stroud's a little bit more polished. I like Bryce Young too. His height thing, though, I feel like ends up scaring the Panthers away ultimately. I know he's been doing it in the NFL and he's done it in the NCAA, and he's done it really, really well. I don't want to take anything away from him, but something just tells me that, and I know Kyler Murray, he was, when he got drafted, number 1 overall, I get that, but something tells me Carolina is aiming at CJ Stroud. And to have watched them jump to get to the number 1 selection so they can get the guy that they want. I talked about this a while ago. It feels like they jumped for that selection because they knew, and a lot of people were mocking CJ Stroud towards Indianapolis. Frank Reich, having been the coach of the head coach of the Colts prior to getting fired last season, I know that he's, all in on dealing with the season and everything that's going on, but he knows kind of what they're targeting at the very least and kind of looking towards for next year's draft class. And I'm sure by, those first few games in, when you see just kind of how much of a disaster things were with Matt Ryan, he probably had an idea that, the Colts are probably eyeballing a quarterback. And I feel like Frank Reich really liked CJ Stroud. And to see him go to the Panthers and then watch the Panthers jump all the way up to number 1 to be able to get the guy that they want. Maybe the Texans were after CJ Stroud too. I don't know, but I saw a lot of people linking CJ Stroud to the Colts. And prior to that jump up by the Panthers, I was kind of feeling the same way. And seeing what the Panthers did there and knowing Frank Reich and what he may have known of Indianapolis's plans, or at least some of their plans, it kind of makes sense to me. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas, but that's my thoughts. Go after a nice defensive end, a guy who, or, outside linebacker, a pass rusher, somebody who is going to help set the edge opposite of Brian Burns so you can help out the rest of your defense there with a more aggressive pass rush. Go get your quarterback. CJ Stroud makes a lot of sense. I feel like he is the safest of the selections. He has good size, accuracy. They're clearly going all in with getting a really good offense surrounding whoever it is that ends up being the QB they draft in that first round. I feel like those two selections make a lot of sense to me. But let me know, my Panthers fans, in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? How are you feeling about this year's draft class for the Panthers? Who do you want to see them target? Who do you think they end up going after? All of that and more. But that is it for me. I appreciate you if you made it all the way to the end of the video. I'll catch you all on another one. Have a good one.